Chapter 1, Hyperspace. Legacy run, 3 hours to impact. All is well. Captain Hednek has reviewed the readouts and displays built into her command chair for the second time. She always went over them at least twice. She had more than 4 decades of flying behind her, and figured the double check was a large part of the reason she was still flying. The second look confirmed everything she had seen in the first. All is well, she said. Out loud this time, announcing it to her bridge crew. Time for my rounds, Lieutenant Bowman. You have the bridge. Acknowledged, Captain. Her first officer replied, standing from his own seat in preparation to occupy hers, until she returned from her evening constitutional. Not a very long-haul freighter, Captain. Ran her ship like a military vessel. Had seen Starship with stained floors, leaking pipes and cracks in the cockpit windows. Lapses that spread to her very soul. But had begun her career as a fighter pilot with the Milestar Solace Joint Task Force, keeping order in the little sector of the mid-rim. He started out flying an Incom Sat-24, a single-seat fighter everyone just called a buzzbug. Mostly police action mission, hunting down pirates and the like. Eventually, though, he rose to the command of a heavy cruiser, one of the largest vessels in the fleet. A good career, doing good work. He left the Malus with the distinction, moved on to a job captaining a merchant vessel with the Brine Guild, a version of relaxed retirement. By 30+ years, the military meant order and discipline weren't just in her blood, they were her blood. The ship she flew was no run like it was about to fight a decisive battle against the Hutt Armada. Even if it was just to carry a load of Ogrotide from World A to World B. This ship, the Legacy run, was no exception. Had stood accepting and returning to Lieutenant Jerry Bowman. Snapped a salute, she stretched, feeling the bones of her spine cracking and crunch. Too many years of patrol in tiny cockpits, too many high-G maneuvers. Sometimes in combat, sometimes just because it made her feel alive. Real problem, though, she thought tucking a strand of grey hair behind her one ear. Is too many years. She left the bridge, departing the precise machine for command deck, and walked along a compact corridor into the larger, more chaotic world of the Legacy run. The ship was Kenneth Yard's Class A modular freighter transport, almost as old as she was. That put the craft a bit past her ideal operation life, but well within safe parameters. If she was well maintained and regular serviced, which she was, her captain sorted that. The run was a mixed-use ship, rather rated for both cargo and passengers, hence modular in its designation. It was composed of a huge central compartment shaped like a long triangular prism, with engineering aft and the rest. With the space allotted for cargo, the bridge connected to the center hull via long boom arms, one which she was traversing at that very moment. Additionally, smaller modules could be attached to the center section, up to 104 swapped in and out the yard depending on what was needed for a given run. And I liked the ship variable qualities. Because it meant you never knew what you were going to get, what weird challenges you might face from one job to the next. She had flown the ship once when half its cargo allotted was reconfigured into a huge water tank to carry gigantic saberfish from the storm sea of Spira to the private aquarium of a contest on Abregado. And then her crew gotten the beast safely. Not an easy gig. Even harder, though, was getting the creature back to Spira 3 cycles later. When the blasted thing got sick because the Countess people had no idea how to take care of it. She gave the woman credit, though. She paid full freight for a second saberfish home. A lot of people, nobles especially, would just have let it die. Yeah, you have a republic, yet you have kingdoms and nobles. Isn't that quaint? And nobles are still dicks. Yeah. This particular trip, in comparison, was as simple as they came. Legacy Run cargo section were about 80% filled with settlers heading to the outer rim from the overpopulated core and colonies worlds. Seeking new lives, new opportunities, new skies. She could relate to that. Ada had been restless all her life. She had a feeling she'd die that way too, looking out her viewport, hoping her eyes would land on something she'd never seen before. Because this was a transport run, most of the ship's modules were basic passenger configuration, with open seating that converted into beds that were in theory comfortable enough to sleep in, sanitary facilities, storage, and a few holoscreen, small galleys, and that was it. For settlers willing to pay for increased comfort and convenience, some had droid-operated auto canteens and private sleeping compartments, but not many. These people were frugal. If they had money to begin with, they probably wouldn't be heading out to Outer Rim to try to escape Outer Future. The dark edge of the galaxy was a place of challenges, both exciting and deadly. More deadly than exciting, in truth. I don't know. Isn't sort of brushes with death the mainstay what all heroes want to do? Or it has to do, regardless. Otherwise, this story wouldn't be interesting. Anyways, I digress. Even the road to get here is tricky, had I thought. I guess drawn by the swirl of hyperspace outside. The large porthole just happened to be passing. She snapped her eyes away. Knowing she could end up standing there for 20 minutes, she let herself get sucked in. You couldn't trust hyperspace. It was useless, you're sure. Got you from here to there. It was the key to the expansion of the Republic from the outer core. Out from the core. Reading very hard, yes. But no one really understood it. If your Navidroid miscalculated the coordinates even a little, you could end up off the market route. Main road through whatever hyperspace actually was. Then you end up on a dark path leading to who knew where. It happened even with well-traveled hyperlanes near the galactic center. And out here, where the prospectors had barely mapped out any routes, well, it was still something you had to keep an eye out on. She put it out of her mind and continued on her way. Truva's legacy run was currently speeding along the most well-traveled, well-known route to the Rimworld. It was a milk run. It moved along this hyperlane constantly, in both directions. Nothing to worry about. With more than 9,000 souls aboard the ship were depending on Hedda to get them to safety to their destination. She worried. Hedda exited the corridor, entered the central hall, and burning into a large circular space in an open spot necessitated by the ship's structure. That she had been repurposed as sort of unofficial common area. A group of children kicked ball around, adults stood and chat nearby, just stretched out in a zone that was different from the zone they awakened every morning. The space wasn't fancy, barely a junction spot where several short corridors met, but it was clean. The ship employed, at its captain's insistence, an automated maintenance crew that kept the interiors neat and sanitary. One of the custoid droids was speeding its way along the walls at the very moment, performing one of the endless tasks that requires a ship of this size to run. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a quick look at the first chapter and See if it's engaging enough. If it is, I might actually track down the book. But so far, it is decent setting building. It's setting up a scenario. I'm just wondering when it's going to crash. Because, after building up hyperspace this much, something ought to be wrong and you're going to collide into something or get dropped into an asteroid field. Or a black hole. Or a Sith Lord. A T posing through space. Captain Casa, the boy said. A boy said, a human olive skin with red hair. She knew him. Hello, sir. Ugh, that name is terrible to pronounce. Ada said. That's a good word. Everything all right here? Could use new children stopped their game and clustered around her. Could use new holos. We have watched everything in the system. All we got is what we got. And stop trying to ship into the into archive to see age-restricted titles. You think I don't know? This is my ship. I know everything that happens on the Legacy run. She leaned forward. Everything. Sir blushed and looked towards his friends who had suddenly found him very interesting things to look at. On the absolutely uninteresting floor, ceiling, and walls of the chamber. Don't worry, she said, straightening. I'll get it. It's a pretty boring ride, but you won't believe me. But in not too long, when your parents have you plowing fields or building fences or fighting off rancors, you'll be dreaming of a time you spent on the ship. Just relax and enjoy. Sarah rolled his eyes and returned to whatever improvised ball game he and other kids had devised. Ada grinned and moved through the room, nodding and chatting as she went. People, probably some good, some bad, but for the next few days, her people. She loved these runs, no matter what eventually happened in the lives of these folks. They were heading to the rim to make their dreams come true. She was part of that. It made her feel good. Chancellor saw the Republic wasn't perfect. No government was or ever could be. But it was a system that gave people room to dream. No, even better. It encouraged dreams big and small. The Republic had its flaws. But all things considered, it could be a hell of a lot worse. Yeah. Ada's rounds took over an hour. She made her way through the passenger compartment. She also checked on a shipment supercool liquid Tibana to make sure the volatile stuff was properly locked down. It was. Inspected the engines. All good. Investigated the status repair to the ship's environmental recirculation system. In progress and proceeding nicely. I made sure fuel reserved was still more than adequate for the rest of the journey. With a comfortable margin besides. They were. The Legacy run was exactly as she wanted it to be. A tiny, well-maintained world in the wilderness of a warm bubble of safety holding back the void. She couldn't vouch for what was waiting for these settlers once they dispersed into the outer rim. But she knew she could get them. But she would make sure they got her safe and sound to find out. At the returned bridge where Lieutenant Bowman has all but leapt to his feet the moment he saw a captain. Saw enter captain on the bridge, he said. And the other officer sat up straighter. Thank you, Jerry. Ada said as the second stepped aside to return to his post. Ada settled into her command. Is that into one word, or is that into? They both work, I suppose. Into her command chair, automatically checking the display, scanning for anything out of the ordinary. All is well, she said. Weep, weep, weep. No, it's not. Ah, here, shit hits the fans. All is well in Tranquility Lane, I see. An alarm loaded in the system's bridge light flipped into its emergency configuration, bathing everything red. Wrote up the front porch as well for hyperspace. Looked off somehow. Maybe it was emergency lighting, but I had reddish tinge. It looked sickly. Ada felt her pulse quicken. Her mind snapped into combat mode without thinking. Report, she barked out, her eyes whipping along a set of screens to find a soft alarm. Alarm generated by the Navicom captain. Caller out her navigator, Cadet Calvar, a young Quermian. Something in the hyperlane that had big impact in 10 seconds. The cadet voice held steady, and Hedda was proud of him. He probably was that much older than Serre. He knew the situation was impossible. The lanes were selected because they were free of debris. Clarity calculated down to a meter of resolution. Any granules missed would be detected and evaded by the ship's navidroid making adjustments along the vector. Light-speed collision along the established lanes were mathematical absurdities. He also knew that even though it was impossible, it was happening, and that 10 seconds was no time at all. A speed like Legacy was traveling. Legacy Run was traveling. You can't trust hyperspace, she thought. Tap 2 buttons on her command console. Brace yourself, she said. I'm taking control. 2 pilots and 6 snapped out from the armrest of her captain chairs. She grasped them, one in each hand. She spared herself the time for one breath as she flew. That took more than 10 seconds. The Legacy Run was not an income buzzbug, or even one of the neural public long beams. It was a 60-year-old fighter at the end of its, if not beyond, its operational lifespan, loaded to capacity with engines designed for slow, gradual acceleration and deacceleration. Docking with spaceport and orbiting loading facilities, it maneuvered like a moon. The Legacy Run was no warship, not even close, but had a fluid like one. She saw the obstacle in the path with the frightened fighter's pilot eyes and instinct. It advanced at incredible velocity, large enough that both her ship and whatever it was would be disintegrated into atoms, thus drifting forever through the hyperlane. There was no time to avoid. The ship could not make the turn. There was no room and there was no time. But Hedda was Captain Hedda Cassett was a helm, and she would not fail her ship. The tiniest tweak for the left control stick and a large rotation to the right, and the Legacy Run moved more than it wanted to, but not less than she believed it could. The huge freighter slipped past the obstacle in her path. Things shooting past her hull so close, Hedda was sure she felt it passing ruffle her hair, despite the many layers of metal shielding between them. But they were alive. No impact. The ship was alive. Turbulence, and Hedda fought it, feeling her way through the jagged bumps and ripples, closing her eyes. Not needing to see it fly, the ship's groaned, brain complaining. You can do it, old gal, she said out loud. We are a couple of cranky old ladies, that's for sure, but we both got a lot of life to live. I've taken damn good care of you, and you know it. I won't let you down. You won't let me down. Hedda did not fail her ship. It failed her. The drone of overstressed metal became a scream as the vibration of the ship passed through space. Took on a new timbre Hedda had felt too many times before. It was a feeling of a ship that has moved beyond its limits, whether from taking too much damage in a firefight, or here, just being asked to perform a maneuver that was more than it could give. The Legacy Run was tearing itself apart. It had seconds to live at most. Hedda opened her eyes. She released the control stick and tapped out commands in the console, activating bulkhead, shielding the that separate shielding that separate each cargo module. In the instance of a disaster, thinking that perhaps it might give us no time to people aboard a chance. He thought about the friends playing in the common area, and how emergency doors are slammed down at the entrance to each passenger module, possibly trapping them in a zone that was about to become vacuum. She hoped that the children had gone to the families when the alarm sounded. She didn't know. He just didn't know. At looked her eye as the first officer was staring here, knowing what's about to happen. He saluted. His bin and the bridge ripped open. Ada Castle died, not knowing if she had saved anyone at all. I have only one very pertinent question about this novel here, and that is, I can't quite bring myself to care. You are promoting Star Wars. Jedi's, lightsabers. Mystical powers, a fight against evil and oppression. And you start off the story about a freighter pilot who gets killed. Mentioning a lot of names and ships and all of that. And just to snuff it out. If this is supposed to be a young adult book or entice new people to Star Wars, I am not entirely sure. This is the approach. At least I am not sold on it. I mean, if you take the Phantom Menace, for example, right? It starts off with a character with having a discussion because they're supposed to do diplomacy. Because Jedi. And then the room gets flooded with gas or something, if I recall correctly. Then they leap out and start cutting down the droids coming to kill them. Kill or capture them. Yes. And in the original first movie they made, what was it? Oh yes. The Queen Amidala getting captured and about to be tortured by the menacing man in black after uploading a message to her droid and watching her man get mowed down. Well, even The Force Awakens had a more interesting opening crawl. But this is a good way to describe the dangers of space travel. It's just not a very decent start for a story, because it's not interesting. This is something I would expect to find in a book or a holotape in Skyrim. But it's decently written, and I suppose somebody will find it interesting, and it will probably grow a bit over time, but for crying loud, you're mentioning Jedis and the High Republic. Show some Jedis. Show some powers, some blasters. Not just dingy insides of a well-cleaned spaceship that's just going to get destroyed anyways. Oh well, I guess it's going to lead up to Rai being probably a orphan and a Jedi Padawan or something. Or, a slave. Or food for a noble. I don't know. Anyways, my name is Njol, #Sassron, signing out, links down below. And goodbye.